So let's get started. As mentioned this week, we're just going to be talking about some general tips to climb. We are getting close to the end of set 9. So that means that I've talked about most of the comps so far. I talked about most of the current strategies. This video will be going into more of like the unique like situations or just like cases that happen in every game. They're just not really talked about. So these will be some tips to help you climb, most of the time just to help you win your rounds and then like top or place a bit higher and then get some more LP. So yeah, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to check out the description so you can check out these videos live, so then you can ask any questions, etc. But without further ado, let's get into it. So on patch 13.16, let's get started and talk about how to climb. We're all here, we all want LP, and yeah, so we're going to start off with some general tips. We're going to talk a bit about the stage 2 economy. Stage 2 is the most important stage for economy, so making sure that we are playing that correctly is important. We're going to then talk about positioning, itemization, augments, and even regions, as that is a new function added into the set. So some general tips before we get into the nitty-gritty. In TFT here, speaking like philosophically, there are kind of like two general styles of play. You hear about like the meme, like first or eighth, but it's kind of a thing. So the first one, it's more of a first or second ranging to like the 7 or 8. So this is more like a riskier play style. This is if you're going for like the win out, the capped boards. If you hit, but if you don't hit, there's not really anything to like back you up. So this is like win outs, capped boards. Right now, most of the highest capped boards is a Philos Bastion. This is like the regular, like either Poro or Earth Philos Bastion. The transfusion one with Vlad is not as good anymore, but Philos remains untouched, so that unit is still super good, even Piltover. So what I mean by this is these are comps that can easily like win out the game. You go first or second, but then if you don't hit, then you're playing a 1-star version of a 4-cost carry, and it's really easy to go 7 or 8 to other players who have hit or have at least like their 2-star like reroll carry, which is the next one. So top 4 comps, these are now comps that are a bit harder to go first place because they don't cap as hard. From a scale of 1 to 10, maybe if you hit everything, you're at like an 8.5, almost a 9. This is because you're spending so much time either like re-rolling or just the units spike really hard mid game but are not as good late game. So like Noxus, if you 3-star your Cat, 3-star Darius, you're probably definitely top 4ing, but you're gonna lose to like a full capped out level 9 board or like something along those lines with someone who's level 9. 7-3 roll Action, Garen Demacia, most of the time, yes, you could top 4 and hopefully try for higher, but it does to get capped out by other boards, same with Rek'Sai, and even Challengers. Challengers is a really good top 4 if you get your Yasuo 2 and Kai'Sa 2. However, these are 4-cost carries, and they will lose to 5-cost carries or just more capped out boards. So two style of play, both of them are fine. It really depends on what items you get, but top 4 comps are super safe, hard to top 1. And then first, I don't want to call it first or 8th comps, but these are comps that don't have like that backup or like safety net. If you don't hit, they can go really big or not hit at all. So there's just general. Other things is not every game is winnable. So what this means is that sometimes you won't always be dropped like the perfect items or get the perfect units. So you just try to like optimize your chances of success as much as possible. So what that means, early game, sometimes you're not dropped like best in slot items. So make sure you slam items even if they're suboptimal early to save HP. So that, like Shiv or just Runons. These are not like the best items on your carry, however, they are still good and will save you HP. And then also, if you're low rolling, make sure you play for your highest placements on the ladder, or just even in general, if you're playing and just trying to top 4, or even just like get as high as a place. Sometimes if you get a top 6, you're happy with it because it could have been an 8th, or like if it could have been 8th and you go 7th. So just play for your highest placement if you're low rolling, and you can't always play for the most optimal choice, or like going level 8 and rolling down. Sometimes you have to roll on 7. So these are just general things about the game. Now we're going to go more into it. So stage 2 economy, this is the stage where you're supposed to be making as much money as possible. HP does not matter. If you stay above 60, I think that's perfect. Anything below that is a little bit sus, but don't worry too much about that. Just make as much money as possible. To help with that, you want to be streaking. So this is either 5 win streaking, so this is ideal because you get that +1 for every round you win. So it's just more money than lose streaking. However, it's not always possible. And if you have a weak opener, or maybe like a gold opener, so you're down 1 item but you have extra gold, then you want to go for the lose streak. By 2-2, you always want to be trying to make 10 gold. On 2-1, if you're like you have a strong board, you're level 4, it's very rare you're gonna have 10 gold. But on 2-2, it's very possible to have 10 gold, and your first 10 makes it easier to hit your 20, and then your 20 makes it easier to hit your 30, 30 makes 40, 40 makes 50, and that's how you build it up for there. So always making the first 10 is the most important, and you're trying to make that the most early as possible. I see a message here. Okay, he's just playing. Sorry about that. Okay, so the next one is on 2-6. So this is after carousel plus 1 round, right before the Krugs. There are some people level to 6 here. The only case where you're supposed to be doing this is if you're either in an econ region or econ augment. So this is something like Scuttle Puddle, or opposite, you're in the sump, so interest doesn't matter. So something like this, or there are 2 other players 4 streaking, and then all 3 of you are 4 streaking, then you can level to 6 and go for that secure win. If not, it's better to just save your money and then go into Krugs with that interest gold. Okay, so this is an example of how to save HP while lose streaking. So let's say that you're at you're at 40 gold with this, right? So that means let's say you're even like level 4. So let's say you're level 4 on like 2-3. This is just an example, right? Okay, maybe not 40. That's a lot. Let's say 20. Let's say 20. You could play an extra unit and go like, and then you're at 19 gold. But then you're with your board like this, or like this is all the units you have. It's much more worth it to make the 20 gold and then just try to kill as much units as possible. So what you want to do is you just want to play like single target units. So single target damage units. These are units like Cassiopeia or like Samira. They do like single target damage, so it's really easy to at least try to kill one unit, pair them together. Playing it on the right side, it will give you the highest chance to kill a unit, and I'll explain why in the positioning. And then some frontline unit, so then this way you have like the highest chance of at least killing one unit, saving that extra HP while making that economy. Okay, so that is just stage 2 general. Well, we'll talk about the loose streaking. So loose streaking is making sure you loose streak properly is super important. So when you are loose streaking, only play units on your board for if they meet these conditions. So 1, they don't actually cost you an interval. So like on this previous slide, let's say if you're playing like these 3 units, but then you're at like 39, then that's not worth it. Just like sell 1 and then make that 40. So only play units on your board if they are not ruining your econ interval. Second one is make sure they actually kill units. So if you're playing like, let's say like a Maokai and a Poppy and maybe like a Jin, and then you're at like 38 gold, then those units are not going to kill anything. Also, they're costing you econ interval, so you might as well just like sell them all. Only play units that will actually kill things. So these are like single target units. However, if you do need your units and you're like rerolling, for example, if you're playing like Kale or Tristana and you have Kales, even if that ruins your econ, then you have to keep it anyway because you're rerolling it. And then the last one is only loose streak and play units if there's not another loose streaker who's contesting you, because the worst thing to happen is if you're loose streaking and then you play someone else who's weaker than you and then you actually beat them. But then your board's weak, so then you can't win the next round. So it's like a lose, 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 win, lose, or something like that, and it'll mess up your streak. So make sure that it follows these 3 rules regarding playing units while loose streaking. The next one is if you have Pilt over 2-1, which is super high roll, you get that dino in and you're just trying to like stack up as many charges as you can and then cash it out, get the big reward. However, you need to be loose streaking, right? So let's say someone's contesting you. This example here is make sure that against, well, you don't know who exactly you're going to play next. So just as precaution, to make your board as weak as possible, make your ranged units, trap your melee units on the right pocket. So then this unit is trapped. These 2 units will die first, and then it'll just be your melee unit. So this is how to make your board as weak as possible to make sure you lose. Now, I said I'll talk about like why the right pocket is so important. So if you look at the hexes on the board, so let's say this is the left one, this is the right one. On the left one, you have 3 possible hexes to attack, like melee units to attack this left side unit. So let's say it's early game, right? And there's a lot of melee units on the enemy team. If they make it past your front line or they just kill it, then there'll be 3 of them attacking your backline unit on the left at a time. However, if you are on the right side, so in this previous example where I used Cassiopeia, Let's say this Cassiopeia dies, then there's only available 2 melee units to be attacking your ranged carry in the right pocket. So then they'll have a higher chance of staying alive a bit longer, getting their ability off, and then hopefully killing one. So it works both ways. If you're trying to just kill units, make sure you place it in the right pocket because of this like 1-2 versus 1-2-3 on the left side. And then if you're trying to trap units to make your board as weak as possible, remember it only works on the right side, and then you trap it with ranged units. Okay, the last point for loose streaking is full open if necessary. If you've been playing any Transfusion of Philios, then you'll know that full open is not that bad, and you might have been doing it for a bit. This is only if there is like some threats of accidentally like breaking your loose streak, and it's okay to full streak or to full open, because let's say that you don't and then you lose, or you win and then it breaks your streak. That little bit of HP saved is not worth like the extra gold, especially going into neutrals on like 2-6. Okay, so I think that's all for economy on stage 2. Just make sure that you make as much money as possible, and then you'll be going into the game with a much easier and it's just a much easier path. Okay, so next one is positioning. We talked about economy now. Let's talk about some positioning tips. So early game, so stage 2, what are we looking out for? Jhin diagonal. So now that Samira's been nerfed, not everyone is just playing like just Samira on their board as their 1-cost 80 carry. There's now some Jhin players, so make sure that if you're playing against Jhin, you avoid the diagonal bullets. And if you are playing Jhin, then make sure that you, I guess, encourage or like position for the diagonal bullets. Make sure to avoid rogues, so there's like any Viego Zed or Katarina plus another rogue. Make sure to position opposite side early. So these are things to avoid. Make sure to position to kill enemy Sunfire and Spark holders. So you want to make sure that you're hitting enemy Sunfire Spark holders first and killing them as soon as possible to make sure that that unit's dead and that item effect will not continue like going. So make sure to position to kill them first. And then on the next slide, we'll talk about how to wrap to the enemy backline. So this example is, let's say this is a very common board. We have our 3 Ionia, 1, 2, 3, and our 2 Juggernaut front line. We have our 80 items on Jhin, positioning for that diagonal. So when he shoots his bullet at like Swain, it'll hit hopefully these 2 units as well. This is just like ideal positioning, and then you're killing the Sunfire. And once this Sunfire is dead, there's no more like grievous wounds effect, and it'll give you a big advantage in the fight. This one on the right is wrapping to the enemy backline, so this only works with melee units. So let's say you're carrying like a Darius. This is how you'd wrap on the left side. So make sure you just like frontline your melee units with your wrapping unit on the far left, and then they will wrap to the back like this instead of going like this. At least most of the time. I'm not sure if it's exactly a 50-50, but most of the time a position like this Darius will walk to the back because Warwick will walk here and like block him a bit. So I'd say like this is almost guaranteed to wrap to the enemy backline, and then Darius will start hitting the backline units. I'll talk more about how to wrap, I think, on this next slide here. So here you go, wrapping. So remember that in TFT, at the start of the round, all units will walk/attack their closest unit, unless there's like a taunt with a Z0 or something like that. They're just programmed to walk and then hit their closest unit. So then if we look at this Darius, right? When we position like this, he has 2 options. He either goes 1, 2, 3, and then he starts attacking the Swain, or he goes 1, 2, 3, and he starts attacking the Cassiopeia or like the Samira. So he has 2 paths. So that's why we position like this. Also Warwick, he has 2 options. He either like walks up here and then goes this way, or he goes this way for Swain. So with him walking up here, this now blocks the Darius from walking like this, and then that's how it wraps to the backline. So if you are playing this melee unit, or most of the time it is Darius, you can also do it with Rek'Sai. Make sure to position like this. I'll talk about how to, I think, Zephyr it on the next slide, or even like the next animation. But if you are playing against melee units, so let's say like you are this top board, most of the time, if you have a Gargoyle Stone Plate, you're just looking to like, okay, just solo frontline it, get as much value as possible. You need to watch out for this wrap. If you like kind of invert the board, so technically, if let's say we're like this top board, our units will be down here with like Samira, Cass, and Soraka is like inverted, and then this is our Swain. The reason why they can wrap on us is because, let's say this will be the enemy Darius, so it's just inverted. The reason why they can walk on us and like wrap is because this hex here is kind of like, you see how it's like positioned a little bit outside of the board. Same with like over here, it's like edged out a little bit to like to the outside. So that's how they're able to wrap here. So it's always on the bottom right that you're able to be wrapped, and it's the enemy bottom right where you're able to wrap. So that's how it works. It can sometimes work on like your right side as well and walk like this, but you see this hex is like more into the board while this one's out. So that's how it works. Basically the bottom right, it's very good for like early game because remember you only have like 2 melee units that can hit you, but then later into the game it's a little bit dangerous because of this hex, and enemy melees might be able to walk onto you. So just prevent that. You just want to put your like frontline melee tanks here if you are positioning on this bottom right, to make sure that you don't get wrapped from over here. So that's wrapping. It's easier if you have Zephyr. So this is how it works. So let's say we're the bottom board, right? We want to like Zephyr the opposite side as our Darius. So then this Shen goes up, and then Darius walks over to the Aphelios. If there was no Zephyr here, because the Shen is closer, let's see 1-2 versus like 1-2-3, then the Darius will walk to the Shen, and then Aphelios will hit the Darius, and it's game over from there. So without Zephyr, it's a bit harder, but once you do have Zephyr, make sure you're Zephyring the same side as your melee units. And then if it was reversed, just put Darius over here and put Kled over here. So that's how you Zephyr. This is like a tip for positioning as a melee carry, and a tip for positioning against melee carry. What this top board should do here is just like move everyone over 1, or just put like the Tark and the Kassadin here to protect his Aphelios. Okay, the next one is just like overall game positioning. So we talked about like early game, watching out for that Jhin, watching out for rogues, killing Sunfire and Spark first. Talk about wrapping, how to protect your backline, and how to threaten like the enemy backline. Then just overall ones. So you want to avoid initially attacking Eternal Winter. So what I mean by initially is like later into the game, there's a lot of units with like AoE or like multi-targeting, so eventually you will hit the Eternal Winter, but especially if you're a Rageblade holder, you want to make sure you're not attacking it right off the bat. So just scout. If it's like threatening this side on your left side carry, just like switch over to the right side. Make sure you watch out for rogues, shroud, zephyrs. A very easy way to counter zephyrs is normally just have like, we have our carries in the corner, right? It's just the safest place. However, if you're scouting around, people are always looking to Zephyr the corners. All you have to do is just like swap it with like a unit beside it. So then it's still like relatively in the corner. It's still pretty safe, and you avoid the Zephyr as well. Other tips is make sure to avoid same siding enemy Luxes. If you have a weak front line, the Lux beam sometimes just like kills the front line and then hits the closest target, or just like kind of just like bugs out and then hits your backline. So make sure you're opposite side Lux. Make sure you avoid opposite side Akshan and Jhin. And then the last one, people might not think about this as much as they, I don't want to say should, but just it's more of an unknown thing, is killing the enemy Aatrox. So if you kill the enemy Aatrox first, then it spawns like the Darken passive on the closest one, and then after a couple of seconds it gives that, I think, like 300 HP, and then same thing over and over again. So if you're playing like a slow paced comp or like a ramping comp, stall comp, you don't want to kill the Aatrox first, because then like it'll spread its passive over and then like apply for everyone else. So position opposite side so you don't hit the Aatrox first. It doesn't do that much damage without any items, so it's okay to just like let it sit and then kill it last. But if you are playing a fast-paced comp like a challenger comp, then it's fine to kill the Aatrox, because you'll kill the unit its passive goes to before it fully activates. Okay, and then if you are playing Aatrox, then make sure you position it right in front of the enemy carry, so then it dies and then is able to spread its passive. So that's how you play Aatrox ideally. Okay, so we talked about some positioning now. We're going to move on to some itemization. So essential things to have in almost every comp. This is like a checklist. You need these in your composition in order to do damage, in order to function, in order to win. First one is healing reduction. You need some form of it. Morello got a recent change where it now applies to units that just use their ability. It doesn't have to be magic damage. So good holders for this now is like Ashe is great. Senna also works super well with this. They fixed the bug recently. So Morello Nomicon doesn't have to be on AP or like magic damage units anymore. So that's super good. Sunfire Cape, this is one of like the best early game items. It's just healing reduction. It's very good. Make sure that if you're playing attack damage comp, you have some form of Sunder, so Last Whisper or Obsidian Cleaver. Same thing for magic damage, you have some sort of Shred, so either Shiv or Spark. And then later into the game, or if you high roll Heimer from a Carousel or on level 7, the Heimer turret gives both Sunder and Shred with the Shrinko, so you can that can bail you out if you don't have any of these. Zon Rise gives wounds, so like healing reduction, Sunder and Shred, and then Freljord is Sunder and Shred. So if you have these, you can bypass if you don't have these items, and it'll help you out there. But make sure that you have some form of this on your team, and that'll help you out a lot in like killing the enemy. So next one is just slams in general. So some really good 2-1 slams. Oh, what about Vi? So good question. So yes, Vi and Lux as well, they do Sunder and they do Shred. However, the amount that they Sunder and Shred is not that much. Also, it's not guaranteed. Lux is a bit more guaranteed because she's a ranged unit and you can really position to see like which unit she hits. So that does help. However, it is still best to have like the actual item or the actual like Heimer turret, especially like Vi. The Sunder is not that much. Also, it's not guaranteed. Sometimes she doesn't cast. Plus, it only hits like one unit every like maybe 10 seconds if she stays alive that long. So Vi's not that consistent. Lux is a bit better. You can same side your Azir and Lux to make sure that Azir is attacking the target that Lux is shredding down. However, it's still better to have a Shiv or a Spark, and having them together work even better. Who's a good Last Whisper user? So Last Whisper, it procs and applies from, it doesn't matter like who the holder is, as long as they can spread it a lot easy. So in a Deadeye comp, Ashe is a really good Last Whisper holder. In Zeri is actually fine of holding Last Whisper because the chain lightning will hit everyone, or like will hit like the 4 or 5 targets she chains to. Basically, ideally, it's not great on your actual carry because anyone can apply this, right? It's like a Shiv. Ideally, you don't want a Shiv on your Ahri, or you don't want a Shiv on your Lux, because you want to place it on just a unit that can apply it. It doesn't actually give like the holder that many stats. So yeah, I would say like for Last Whisper, like Ashe, Senna is good. Zeri is fine because she spreads it so efficiently. But yeah, that's what you're gonna ask about Lux Azir. Yeah, no worries. Okay, so next one is 2-1 slams. Remember I was talking about sometimes you're not dropped like the best items or like the best ideal items. You just have to make do what you have. So making these 2-1 slams to save HP, and then I just show like what you can play into. So like Runons can go into any AD carry. So like Yasuo, Zeri, Philosophies work super well. Val, Gargoyle, and Sunfire Cape, there's all just tank items. So you can play it on your frontline tank like Shen or Sejuani. Shiv, so we were just mentioning this. It works well on Azir because he benefits a lot from attack speeds, so then he could proc it very often, or just any supportive backliner. Titans needs to go on an AD melee unit, so like Darius, Rek'Sai, Yasuo, these are all good. Rageblade, just any stacking attack speed, like any user that benefits from attack speed. Bloodthirster, I'd say the only two, Darius, Rek'Sai, like maybe Urgot benefits from this as well, but not Yasuo. Yasuo already has built-in Omnivamp, so make sure you're not building Bloodthirster on Yasuo. And then Jewel Gauntlet is a good slam. I'll explain in a second why IE is a bad slam, but Jewel Gauntlet is a good one. Yeah, sorry, BT is also good on Garen. Garen is also Darius, Rek'Sai, and Garen. And then Jewel Gauntlet on any AP carry. The reason why is crit items only work well if you have like the raw base stat. So for example, Jewel Gauntlet works well if you have a lot of ability power. Infinity Edge works well if you have a lot of attack damage. And for AP comps, there's a lot of compositions that give you just pure AP from playing the traits, like Sorcerers. So then you get the pure AP from that. And then if you slam this early on 2-1, you have the crit, so that works out super well. However, for AD, there's no like AD Sorcerers, which just gives the AD. The closest one is Noxus. And then Infinity Edge is good basically only on Darius. But yeah, don't slam Infinity Edge on 2-1. Okay, we are running a little bit lower on time, so I will answer these questions at the very end. So I'll just keep going for now. Next one is tank items and how they stack multiplicatively. So if you mix together health and armor, it's a lot more effective health than just mixing together health and health. Because they synergize so well together, you're taking less damage from attack damage, and then you have more health to back that up. So make sure that you have an optimal mix of health, armor, magic resist, and damage reduction, rather than just stacking one exact unit or one exact stat. So an example of this, you would much rather have Warmogs plus Gargoyle on a unit rather than Bramble plus Gargoyle because of the mentions above. So what does this mean? There's a lot of comps that benefit from specific things rather than others. So Bruisers and Noxus, these are both traits that give your units a lot of HP. So because you now have a lot of HP, instead of wanting more HP, you'd rather resistances. So Randuin's Omens works super well with Bruisers and Noxus. Unified Resistance is also really good with Bruisers and Noxus. So this is an example of like the Noxus comp with Randuin's. And then there you go. You have your HP plus resistances of other HP and armor, HP and magic resist. And then vice versa. So like Bastion comps, they already have so much resistance of armor and magic resist. They much prefer health. So that's why the Transfusion of Healers Bastion comp was so good. You already had so much armor and magic resist from your Bastion units, and then giving them extra health. So then health and resistances, they work together. So that's how you want to be itemizing and just playing around your tanks. And damage, it works in a different way. So once again, it's optimal to have a mix. So this is either like attack damage, attack speed, ability power, crit damage, amp. You want to have like a mix of this rather than just 3 attack damage items, or rather than 3 attack speed items. Generally, there are some cases like Callisto, much rather attack speed, but for the most part, just have a mix instead of just like stacking all of one stat. So an example is Aphelios. So probably I'd say the best 4-cost carry right now, at least for the 80 side. So for Aphelios, like Deathblade plus Ginsu's, having that raw AD plus your attack speed from Ginsu's is a lot better than a damage amp and then attack speed. Because, well, you have your attack damage, you're finally actually doing damage, and then attack speed, they synergize so well together. However, with just Giant Slayer and Ginsu's, your damage amping nothing, and you're attacking fast with amplified nothing. So that's how some of this mixture works. So next one is 2 damage amplifier items don't work well with each other. So like 2 Giant Slayers, or like Sniper's Focus plus Giant Slayer, as I mentioned above. So a damage amplifier item only works super well if it has something to amplify. So like a Deathblade plus a Giant Slayer, something like that, or like Sorcerers plus a Giant Slayer. However, if you just have 2 amplifier without like anything to amplify, it doesn't work that well. So don't make like 2 Giant Slayers. Next one is crits. So I mentioned this, I think, on the slide below, or a slide before, so I won't go into it too much, but like in order to really make use of Infinity Edge, you need to have attack damage. And then in order to make use of Jewel Gauntlet, you need to have ability power. And then last one is crit synergizes super well with more crit. So like Hodge plus Jewel Gauntlet is super good. Hodge plus IE is super good. Guardbreaker plus Jewel Gauntlet and IE is super good. And then if you have Jewel Lotus, then you could do Guardbreaker plus Hodge. You don't have to build Jewel Gauntlet or IE because you have Jewel Lotus, the augments, and then you can have your +1. So this is how damage item stats work together. I guess you just have to think a bit through it and then make sure to just like maybe even do some research if you're unsure, but generally this is how the damage item stats multiply with each other. And yeah, okay, I think the last one for items is cheese. So stage 4 cheese items, these are just items that I don't really know how to describe cheese. It's just I guess like something to just like mess with your enemy or like slow fights down. So this is super good for a super good late game as they stall enemy units. Early game, so stage 2, it's a lot of like slow fights, drawn out DPS, right? So stalling 5 seconds doesn't really matter. However, in late game, fights are really fast. The first 5 seconds matter a lot. So that's why these cheese items, Shroud and Zephyr, are super good. This is the Shroud lines. So if you Shroud on this hex, it gets this sector, same with this and same with this. Any of like the halfway lines, for example, like this, like halfway, either this position or this position hits. So these are the 3 main ideal positions for Shroud. However, these 2 hexes dodge Shroud from this area. So if the enemy carries are over here, then you want to place it a bit over to the side. Okay, I think I'm going to keep going. We're almost out of time here. So augment optimization, just try to take at least 2 combat augments per game and only 1 economic. Don't take too many economic augments or else you're going to be just down combat stats versus other boards. And then when re-rolling your augments, make sure that you have a backup choice. So if you look at all 3 and your first one's already pretty good, then you can go ahead and greed, roll for your second and third option, see if you have something better, and then fall back on your first option if they don't happen to be good. Some position influencing augments, so this is how you do it. So social distancing, really good on challengers because every unit is good. So just making sure that no units are adjacent to one another, and then not frontlining your Yasuo so he doesn't get hit right away. Unified resistance, I explained, bruisers have already so much HP, so they just want resistances instead. Because you have so many frontline units, they work super well with placing them all in the front row. And the last one, long distance pals, all super good in either challengers or Zeri Urgots. You want to make sure you have 2 main carries, and then this is how you'd position. You can also swap it, so Yasuo over here and Kai'Sa over here, if there's like Zephyrs or Shrouds you need to dodge. Okay, I think this is the last one, so regions. I'll just talk about a couple regions that I see either people aren't playing right or it's a little bit harder to play, so they don't know how to play it. First one is Stillwater Hold. This is notorious. Some people don't like it. I didn't like it at the start now, but actually I do now. No augments, which kind of defeats the purpose, but it adds a new variable to your game. So the only variables in your game during Stillwater Hold is mainly your item drops. Units you could somewhat control through like proper leveling and rolling. Carousel items you control is just your item drops. So what does this mean? With no augments, econ is a lot lower for everyone. So then boards like voids, challengers, even boards that just cap on level 7 or are level 7 boards, they have so much more value because other players are not able to achieve like as high of a capped boards like level 9 boards that easy. You have to make sure to streak properly on stage 2 in order to make as much money as possible. There's no economic augment bailout, so make sure you spend your money wisely and just save your money wisely. And then because of this lower econ, you can't always greed for level 8, so make sure you roll on level 7 if you have to and stabilize from your board. Okay, next one is Dreaming Pool. So this is the one that it's an Ionia portal or Ionia region. Basically at the start of each stage, so like 2-1, 3-1, 4-1, 5-1, you gain a champ that fits your team. So that means it's based off of your active traits. So make sure that on PvE rounds, so the round right before your 2-1, 3-1, 4-1, you only play units on your board that have the traits that of a unit you desire. And then stage 2 is 2 cost, stage 3 is 3 cost, and it keeps going like that until stage 5, then it's always a 5 cost unit. So if you're playing something like Noxus, make sure you only have Noxus in to get either like a Swain or Kled, and then a Katarina or Darius. So make sure you just tell your board during the minion round right before the starting of each stage to get a unit that you desire. Okay, and the very last one is Thresh's Sanctum. So this is when any unit dies, it's not just champion, it's just any unit. You collect their soul, and then every 40 souls you collect, you gain loot. You can sack a lot during minion rounds, so this is how you do it. So during minions, this is stage 1. Units like Kale and Tristana, they do very little damage when they're 1 cost, and they have very little health. So what you could do for minions is just like sack either the Kale or the Tristana, and then play another unit, preferably like something like a Maokai or Aurelia, because they don't do much damage and it'll take a while for them to walk up. So this is how you get extra sacks. And then same with Krugs, you just want to sack it to like the 2 Krugs over here and then place the rest of your board on the side. So why is this important? Well, getting that first, or getting these extra stacks help you get to your 40, 80, 120 faster, and if it's gold, it helps you reach your next interval faster. So yeah, that helps out a lot. Okay, so that is all. I know there's some questions, so I'm going to go answer those. Thanks everyone for watching, and see you next week.